Hi guys, Joel here from Paddle Nation again. Today I'm very lucky once again. We're joined by something of a UK SUP legend, really. It's probably the best way to explain it. So today we're joined by Ryan James. Ryan, hi, how are you doing?
Not too bad, mate. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. It's been a fun day in the office. I haven't got to go out paddling today, unfortunately, so it's not been the best of days. But with a bit of luck, maybe tomorrow.
Absolutely. It's like a downwind on.
Yeah. So Ryan, for those people out there that may not have heard of you, may not have sort of know you before and such like that, you've had pretty impressive sports background. I think is a fair way of describing it. From what we understand, you've been involved in a range of sports, from swimming to running, cycling, triathlons, Ironman triathlons, into obviously paddleboarding and such. So. And it looks as if you've obviously been involved in this from almost an amateur level all the way through to sort of the high levels of the professional ranks. So
yeah,
it's a quite a varied career and different sports and different standards. And one of the things we're really curious about is kind of where it all started for you and how you went from sport to sport to sport and such like that.
I mean, way back when, and both my parents moved down from the north. So I think one of them's from Durham, one of them's from Manchester. So they moved down with their parents, and because I've grown up around the coast, around the beach, they wanted to make sure that I could swim, and basically they didn't have to watch me while they were eating.
Yeah,
I could go and play in the water without me drowning. So the first thing they did was chuck me in the water. I learned how to swim. I sort of picked up, I guess, I just enjoyed being in that environment from the word go, really, and just loved being around the water in the sea. I mean, I think one of my first things I ever had was like a mask and snorkel and stuff, and just I think my parents were constantly worried about me going out my depth, but yeah, I used to love it. So I went from swimming, got really into that. I didn't really get too far, wasn't talented enough, but went out to America, had a scholarship in college out there, came back over here, went back to uni at Portsmouth, did a sports science degree in there. I met another guy doing triathlon. They needed a swimmer on the team. He said, come on board. So I spent all my student loan on a bike, learned to ride a bike and run again, and started triathlon amateurly. And then from there, had a talent for going long and holding sort of good speeds. The longer a distance I went, the better I could hold. Got into long distance triathlon, and then sort of middle distance triathlon, and then to Ironman. So did a couple of world championships and stuff, and then sort of had a couple of years off. Went back in triathlon, didn't really like it again, so I thought, well, I need to get into something else. Got into kite surfing, but missed that competitive edge.
Yeah.
And then got into snowboarding, broke my shoulder and took my AC joint, and then had some surgery on that. And someone bought me Laird Hamilton's book. Got into that, and there was paddleboarding in that. I thought, great, eBay. Bought myself a Naish board. I think it was a Nalu. I think about 11 foot. It's like a battleship.
Yeah,
that's like the guys you tell. It was like the Bismarck, the Scharnhorst. Got into that. Turned up at Branksea Island where there was a race on, and I noticed all these other boards, like race boards, K15s, and they were back in the day. And I thought, these are like kayaks, and the guys shot off, and I'd never had a chance, but got the buzz back again, and then bought my own race board and bought me on a couple of paddles from the SUP store, and away I went, really.
Excellent. So it's obviously been a really interesting career for you, I guess, sports-wise, and a transition from one to the other. But it sounds like you've always sort of stayed sort of water-based and around the water and such like that.
And I had a brief interlude in the track cycling. That was about 2 or 3 years, but again, it was just really the draw of the water, being by the coast all the time. I moved up to Bath, and then basically all my weekends were spent back down at the coast again. So I thought I need to get a job back down in Port of Bournemouth or by the coast. So I can never be away really too much. As long as I've got my feet on some sand, I'm all good.
That's good. I mean, one of the things that I'm really curious about, I'm sure other people will, because you don't always get the chance to ask the question of people that have competed at a higher standard. I mean, what was it like competing at sort of those kind of professional levels, especially in things like the Ironmans, where they're really intense from the looks of things, and really sort of hard work from that kind of from that level?
Yeah, I mean, it was always a long day in the office, and training was up to probably 35 to 38 hours a week when I was pro. So it was a long week and it was a big commitment. And because the longer it is, the more things can go wrong. So it was a bit of a lottery. So that's one of the reasons why I gave it up in the end, is that there was no rhyme or reason really to have a bad race. But if you got your hydration wrong or your nutrition wrong on the bike section, or you didn't save enough for the run, you were always the performance didn't add up. Sometimes it went great, sometimes it went you just crashed out. So there's a lot of times I was walking a lot for a long way. So I went to Nice once and came probably in the top sort of 15 off top 15, top 20 off the bike at the World Championships, and I thought, this is great, and then ended up walking about 30k, just blown up completely, and had nothing left. So it was it was pretty bad. And 30k is a long way to walk.
No, it is. I mean, I've done a couple of long distance cycles. When I say long distance cycles, sort of kind of 100 odd miles, 110 miles for 3 days on a trot in Tour of Wessex, and they were really heavy. They were really brutal, really hard going, and sort of hit the sort of the 60, 70 mile markers, and suddenly there's a wall, and it's just getting through.
Yeah.
So the idea of the swim beforehand and the run after is just kind of petrified to me.
Yeah.
Which is a really curious thing for me is what is it that drives you on to sort of continue to, I guess, not just compete in those events, but really to sort of push yourself through those events and to finish sort of as high as you can. And I guess not just in cycling and triathlons, because obviously you've got a fantastic reputation in paddleboarding, and certainly in the race scene, you're obviously smashing those left, right, and centre. So what it is that sort of drives you through that and through the training and stuff?
I just enjoy it. I enjoy the competitiveness. I enjoy. There's something, if I have too much time off, I become very grumpy. I'm like a bear, so I need to take the edge off myself a lot of the time. So, which isn't good, especially for the people I live with and my parents and stuff like that. So, I've been training for so long, I don't know what to do with myself if I'm not training. So, there's probably a slight addiction there, which isn't probably too healthy. But I put it down to just the enjoyment of being out in the water. It's that solitude, that sort of meditative effect. I can be on my own. I can be and mull stuff over in my head. I can focus on what I'm trying to do, put the sessions together properly. And also, I mean, I don't mind hurting myself. So I know the gains are going to come. I just have to be training harder than everybody else. And if I can do that, and if I'm out there putting it on the line most days, then I know that I'm going to come out with good results. And the competition is the enjoyment side of it. The training is the hard part, and the horrible part. But the competition and being in shape, feeling good about yourself, and crossing that line first is it's an amazing experience. But that's what I enjoy about it, really.
I was going to say, is it sort of I guess the whole day of competitions and events and such is quite exciting, but I guess it's that really sort of crossing the line and knowing that you've sort of pushed it the best you can and coming hopefully obviously in the pole position. But absolutely. I mean, even if I don't win, it's not leaving anything on the water. If I've left everything on the water, I've done whatever I can, and that's the thing that's the positive thing. But it's also enjoying that sub community, is that everybody's so friendly. I mean, from the outside, it probably looks slightly intimidating because of the racing scene, but it's one of the friendliest environments I've ever been in. Triathlon was also very friendly, but running, swimming, and cycling on their own are very cliquey and very almost elitist to a certain degree, but the sub community is really welcoming, and also it's that ethic of taking advantage of every condition on the water. So it's something I learned from Steve West, is that whatever you're presented with, you've got a tool to use. So I spend a lot of time outrigger canoeing. I spend a lot of time swimming still, and if it's surfing, I might go surfing. I don't surf as much as I should do probably. But if it's flat, I'll go paddling. If it's downwind, I go downwinding. It's taking advantage of the other conditions that you're presented with, which makes water enjoyable and makes it exciting. Yeah, no, definitely. I was going to ask you, the next thing I was going to come on to is very much sort of your training. I think you touched on some of it there in the different conditions and sort of what you have available to you. But I mean, from a training perspective, as you sort of said earlier before we started, you'd obviously been out training today. And what is a normal sort of week and a day for you from a training perspective? I assume it's a little bit less than you were doing pre-Ironman.
Yeah. Well, I hold down a full-time job, so I'm lucky enough to work from home once a week, so I can get a lot of stuff done there, and I'm around the environment. So, but otherwise, I've got only my mornings, lunch, and my evenings to train on. So, I mean, I think people think I'm training a lot more than I am. I mean, when I'm out there, I just make sure I take advantage of the time I've got. So if I've got 20 minutes, I make sure that I fulfill that 20 minutes completely, and it's not mucking around. I'm not just out there messing about. Although I do have fun sometimes, but it's about utilising the time and constructing something that's going to take advantage of that time that you've got. But usually I'm in the water probably 5 or 6 times a week. I do probably about 2 gym sessions a week, and then I do 3 to 4 yoga sessions a week as well.
Okay.
But gym could be 15 minutes, 20 minutes. Yoga probably half an hour, and sub sessions are usually from about sort of 40 minutes to 2 hours to 2.5 hours, depending on how much time I've got.
And then what do you do for example, in a sub session? Will you just find that? I mean, is that purely sort of conditions based, or will you do like sprint intervals? Will you do distance?
Yeah, I mean, tonight, just for one example, I had it's interval training, but it was a threshold session. So I did what did I do? God, 1 minute at level 2, which is nice and easy warm up.
Yeah.
Then I did 3 times 2 minutes at level 4, which is at threshold. With 20 seconds recovery between each 2 minutes, and then I did 6 minutes at level 3, which is just below threshold, and I did that 4 times through. So it's quite structured, and the idea is that if you just go out and paddle, you're just going to go probably at one speed, so you need to be almost simulating race conditions. So it's just, I do intervals, I do long slow duration stuff, so a lot of times I train with a guy called Pete Holiday down here, and we go out in our canoes quite a lot. So like Sunday we did an hour and a half at level 3, so it's just constant, and just it's hard, but we can chat at the same time. So we're putting the work in, but we can able to have a conversation at the same time. So it's mixing it up, and it's using all those different energy systems that you have, the easy stuff and the stuff that makes you feel sick, but not too much of that. And the stuff that's hard but comfortable and controllable to hold. So for me, it's all about having different gears that I can use. So I've got an easy gear, I've got a hard gear, I've got a race pace gear, I've got an over race pace gear, and I've got a sprint gear. So it's making sure that you do work in all of those different areas.
And I assume you utilise pretty much all of those throughout a race, obviously at different
Yeah,
stages.
absolutely.
Different distances.
Absolutely. Starts can be. It can be very easy. It can be very tricky. So Hello Dart for me was first race of the season, and I knew it was going to be pretty tough because everybody's moved brand. So I've moved to Mistral, so I knew everybody was going to be out to try and nail one on me on the first race. So I knew that was going to be hard. So I was fighting with Paul Simmons for probably about 3 Ks until the elastic band snapped, and I was able to get on my own. So then once you're there, then you can relax into your rhythm and into your stroke, and things not become easy, but they become more settled, and you can work on your strategy then from there. So
I mean, I saw you ahead of the dart. I saw you start from I was quite far back, so I saw you start from there, and I certainly crossed you on the way through, and watching Andy come past on, I think, a sort of a 17 footer, which was huge, and then, seeing sort of you guys not too far behind, and just seeing the difference of that race pace was insane. I mean, I think I probably made a bit of a mistake because I used an 11 footer for there, but it was an inflatable. It was sort of 34 wide, so it was like a cross-channel ferry. Absolutely. Fantastic in the wind, but not so great coming back up the stream. So I mean, in terms of equipment, do you sort of have a preference? Obviously, Mistral, you're with this year. I mean, in terms of what you use, and will that vary depending on the different races throughout the season? Or
I mean, it's very difficult. Boards are expensive, but I mean, the second-hand market's very good now, so you can pick up a good race board for sort of 400 or 500 quid, which is pretty good considering they retail now for sort of 2.5 to 3 grand to the top race boards. But I'll always have I don't know, a quiver is probably the wrong word, but I'll have a board for the conditions that present. So I'll have an open ocean board, and I'll have a flat water board. So the board I was on at the Dart was a flat water board. If we were going to go all the way down, I probably would have gone onto a open ocean board because the wind was so strong coming up, so it would have been better in a chop. So usually open ocean boards have a more rounded nose, more volume in the nose, so they can stay above the water. Whereas if you rode a flat water board in chop, it would usually dive down under the water, and you've got the water pressing down in it. So it's great to have two boards to pick from, and I don't think even one manufacturer hasn't come up with a great all-round board yet. So the Mistral I've tried, the open ocean one that I ride, is fast in the water, in flat water, but it's nowhere near as quick as the flat water board. So you're losing probably about half a kilometre an hour on the different board types, which is a big difference when you're doing it.
I was going to say, depending on the distance, obviously they can make a huge difference. And will you use those in sort of the technical shorter distances as well? You'll split between those boards and.
Yeah, I mean, I've got to be careful with what I ride. So if I go to look at riders like Ollie Shilston or Pete Holiday, those guys are probably 75 kilos wet, whereas I'm 90 to 92 kilos. So I go on a 12.6 board on a technical in a race, then I'm at a big disadvantage because I'm carrying more weight on a smaller volume board. Yeah. So I tend to stay with the 14-foot boards, just because it suits my size. Even if I don't constantly try to drop weight, but even if I was to drop a few kilos, I'm still at 88 kilos when I'm in the season. So I'm still giving away sort of 10 kilos. If you imagine picking it up and dumping it on a board and trying paddling with it, it's a lot of weight to carry around. So I leave the technical race usually, and I'm not great at turns either. So I'm a big believer in going with your strengths. Also, if you've got weaknesses, make them your strengths. But and I've got a lot better over the years that I've been doing it. But technical is a lot harder for me because there's a lot of stop and starting. So there's a lot of acceleration, deceleration, turns. There's a lot more places to make mistakes. So I do prefer the out and backs, the downwinding, and also the ultra distance stuff as well.
That would obviously make sense with your background. I think I read in one of your previous articles and interviews that very much you enjoy sort of your downwind racing, the fast speed racing, and
it's just such a shame that there's not more downwind races. It's the people that if you've never done it before, you need to get involved with it. It's if you love surfing. Trying to get surfers into it as well. It's that we have a run down here which is probably 19 kilometres, and we get that done in probably about an hour and 20 minutes. Oh, wow, and it's just surfing the entire time. Whether when you're in an outrigger canoe, whether you're on a stand up, it's just a phenomenal bit of excitement because you're hardly paddling, so the energy give is very small. It's very anaerobic, so there's a lot of quick acceleration, but there's a lot of sit back, rest, and surf all the way down the coast. So. Yeah, downwindings are amazing. It's where really the sport should progress to. I mean, obviously, if you're into stand-up, you might have heard of Molokai to Oahu. That's one of the sort of biggest channel crossings and biggest downwind events you've got. So it's all about that, and that's the most fun. And flat water for me it's a grind. So I'm looking for anything to help. So if a boat goes past, I'm looking to jump onto that wake or just take advantage of any bump that I can find to make it less of a grind. So the downwinding that's what it's all about. Open ocean, take advantage of the bumps, get the energy from the water and utilise it. So it's very difficult with flat water.
No, that makes a lot of sense, and it is something I'm quite keen to start looking at again, getting more into sort of the downwinds because I love surfing. I've surfed for years, and I love that speed and that drive, and sort of the pick up and the take off of the waves and coming back in. And I know when I first sup surfed, I was just like, this is. It took me to another level because all of a sudden that getting onto a wave was just so much easier. The effort was a lot less.
Absolutely, we always stood up, aren't you? That's the great thing about it.
It was just a complete game changer for me. So when I started seeing all the different types of races and such, it was interesting. I think I'll have the same challenges that you do. That I'll have to stand on a larger board, being on a slightly bigger frame, being slightly heavier than some of the small guys. And I was speaking to Andy. He's obviously 5'9", quite small, but obviously can fly in. On a 17-foot board, that's going to be interesting. But
absolutely,
So, I mean, from a sponsorship perspective, because obviously we see in the SUP world, obviously the higher performers, the elite guys, all have a sponsorship to one of the brands, to one of the manufacturers. So, is it right that you moved to Mistral this year or last year?
I moved to Mistral this year. So I was with Starboard for probably 4 years previous to that. But the opportunity came up that I could have input into the board design and board development.
Yeah.
And also, Mistral were looking to promote the brand through SUP, which is they're an old windsurfing brand.
They're a really big.
They're looking really to reinvent themselves. I was just excited about new projects. They've got a great shaper, Bro Diplock down in Cornwall, Weybridge.
Yeah.
Bringing that team together, myself, Steve West, and Bro, and plus Paul is laminator. They were getting lots of advice from California and stuff, so it was really exciting to be involved in that board development. And the first outing was the Dart for the new flat water board, and it went like a dream. So
I think I saw you speak to Ruben at Supboard Mag afterwards, and you were saying that obviously you would be able to have some input into the board. And I know with some of the other paddlers that we've spoken to and such, they don't necessarily get that input because they're UK based, and obviously the US or Australia or New Zealand will obviously get sort of first pick at that. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's just great to have that input because you can build a board. So the idea was to start off with this year was to build the boards around me. So I knew what I liked, and some of the starboard boards I've been riding before had really great elements. So it was great to take what worked, and we know what works, and then just to develop it even further. So we knew a voluminous nose worked in open water, so that's what we based the open motion board on. So we wanted it to stay on water, we wanted it to downwind well, but also we wanted it to be relatively competitive in flat water as well. So we took a lot of elements from lots of areas and really tried to develop it forward and to make some fast boards that were. It's hard to, again, like I said, it's hard to make an all-round board. So we had to go for 2, and then we're producing a 12.6 as we speak at the moment. So and we should have some riders hopefully coming through on those 12.6 boards and another 14-foot rider soon. So watch this space. That's one of the reasons I moved over. It was thinking that, well, how many years left have I? How can I keep charging? Keep on training as hard as I am, and so it's nice to have laying some foundations about where the sport's going to be, and also invest in the sport because it's such a minority sport still. Although it's got big growth, it's still a minority sport. Although we take it serious at the top end, we need to invest in those grassroots. So it's encouraging the kids to get involved in it, and also it needs to look cool because otherwise no one's ever going to get involved with it. So it's trying to make that stuff stuff cool, so people get involved, and trying to make the boards competitively priced so it's not overpriced. As well, so it's accessible.
It's exactly that. It's accessibility. I think a few people we've spoken to it's about getting that sort of junior level, and because supping's quite new in the UK. I mean, it's obviously been around for a couple of years, but it's still quite small. There's still sort of quite a small group doing it. So I think once you find the juniors sort of coming through, and they do it from a younger age and come through, you'll find that the age of sort of the teams in Great Britain and stuff like that will start to come down.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we've already got younger guys nipping at the heels, so it's it just I'm ended up having to race and train smarter than those guys are, so they can recover a lot quicker than I can. So I have to invest a lot more in my recovery now. So which is really important as you get older.
Yeah, and I think we'll see it as well as sort of year on year. I mean, I've been looking through, we've been doing our events calendar for this year and looking through the events director. I think there's sort of 29 kind of key events this year. Whereas I think next year that's going to go up by at least another 10, maybe 15. So I think sort of year on year we're going to start seeing sort of SUP events every weekend pretty much. And, and that's going to start tightening in obviously the recovery times and things like that. So, but I've got to be honest though, it's great. We love being involved in a sport that's just growing so much at the moment. It does seem to be sort of the world's fastest growing sport, I think, across the globe. So it's quite an exciting time for it. And different production. I guess that obviously alludes as well to you obviously wanting to be involved in more board designs and such like that. And
yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's I guess I've been lucky enough to have some good people around me to allow the technique and stuff to develop. Because when you come into it, it's one of the worst things I see is that the coaching that's available isn't really proactive enough to actually. There's a lot of people coaching that can't really paddle themselves. So it's really we need to develop that into the sport to make sure that the instructors out there that are teaching the new people in there that can actually paddle. Because there's so many times, because I live by the coast, we've seen the summer people going out for lessons and stuff like that, and paddles ran the wrong way, and kneeling down the boards, we're trying to hold the handles on top of it, even when they knelt down. It's lots of really silly little mistakes that instructors could pick up on. So it's really just making sure that if people get into it, actually they're at a point where they understand what they need to do. It makes it more comfortable with them, and actually they want to stay in the sport rather than actually just it's just like a kayak, and then I might use it for twice in the summer and then chuck it away in the garage again. So we've really got to develop that sort of coaching side of it, and get those instructors up to a really high level, so that we can, so you can see people in the water and they're enjoying themselves, and actually they can get themselves out of trouble, because it's such a new sport and its growth is so high. I mean, I think the other day there was a couple of paddle boarders that were rescued around this area, and it was in the harbour. But they didn't know how to self-rescue themselves. So they thought the only way I can get across is to stand up. They didn't realise actually I can put my paddle on my chest, and actually I can prone paddle back across the channel. Even though the wind's high, they can get yourself out of the wind. So it's just getting basic stuff like that across to the new beginners and the people to invest in that, to make sure the sport doesn't stagnate and actually just keeps on progressing, because it's such an accessible sport.
I think that's it. I think the accessibility is fantastic, and I can remember the first time I went down to the coast, and from being a surfer, it's always a case of going down, sort of chasing the tides, chasing the swells and such, and going down with a sup was kind of like, actually, if it's flat, it doesn't matter. I can still go out and I can still do stuff, and that's quite interesting. I think what we've seen is when we've been down the coast is now that you're getting more surf hire places and such, obviously you're hiring out sups, so you're getting a lot more people will go out and just hire one and try it, and that's almost, I mean, it's a great thing, but at the same time it's almost a little bit kind of there's some elements of danger in there, because now you've got kind of a really heavy sort of amount of people, if you will, a good volume of people in the water, all on sups, all maybe catching the odd wave and such like that, and they are obviously much bigger, they're much harder to handle than surfboards. And
they are. And that's another thing that we're trying to develop with Mistral, is that no manufacturer at the moment is developing a female board. So with if you just develop one type of board that it's okay for guys, but what if it's not okay for the girls as well? So you need something that's light, you need something that's very narrow. So if you imagine my shoulders are broad, so if I can paddle a 26 wide board, but if you're that much narrower, how can you paddle the same size? So your stroke goes completely already. So it's trying to develop that female side of it as well, to encourage the girls to get in, because so many sports tend to be so male dominated, and we need to get the girls in. And I'll help run a club based up down here, and trying to get the girls involved with it, it's really difficult, because it does look intimidating, and it's a new skill to learn. And really, when you pick up the board, especially your first race board, if it's glass and not carbon, it's really heavy, so they've got to try and get on the roof rack, and it's trying to develop those things that it's easy to handle, it's accessible, because you can control the board. So and those are the things that they need to develop. The manufacturers need to develop that sort of stuff as well, to make it easier for both genders to get into the sport, rather than just rely on inflatables. They need to be making race boards that actually are narrow enough for a female frame, rather than just a male frame as well. So it's really important to develop that.
Inflatables are great. I mean, I've got a couple of inflatables, different makes, different manufacturers, and they are great just because the ease of just being able to chuck them in a boot and after them get on roof racks and such like that, and they're pretty easy to pump up. But I'm never going to be able to compete at the same level as somebody on a hardboard, because of the rigidness and because of the way it sits. So it is almost, it is different in terms of if you take it in sort of events and competition. There
definitely is a place for the ice up. It's it does make it, if you've got storage issues. I mean, I can't move anywhere now without having a garage. So it's really difficult. So it makes that storage and those. But the funniest thing with ice ups is that the more you get into racing ice ups, is that their race boards, they're trying to make them like hard boards, so it's almost defeating the object of it. So if you have storage, definitely go for a hard board. But if you haven't, got to go for an ice up. But take it down the garage, get the compressor on there, get that thing up to about 3 bar.
You've got to get them nice and pressurised. I mean, one of the things I wanted to ask you, it's interesting again going into different people, is around sort of technology. I think we've alluded to it there, and sort of the improvements in the boards and such. Obviously, there's going to be a huge amount of technology behind how they're developed and manufactured and such like that. But technology from actually like racing and training and such. I mean, do you use? I assume you do quite a bit of heart rate training and use heart rate monitors and such like that.
I mean, I use a Garmin.
Okay.
That's what I use for all my sessions, but because it's Garmin, I've got a great little site called Garmin Connect, and you can program all your sessions in. download them to your watch, and then I'll just click on session 1, session 2, session 3, and then get it done every week. It's just the easiest thing to do. So, yeah, GPS is probably the only. It's not really accurate, but it's the best way to track how much you're doing, what volumes you're doing, what intensities you're doing at. But also go on feel as well. So it's really important to make sure that when you are paddling, you know what gear you're in, so you know what it feels. Because a lot of times if you're racing, it's not really enough time to go, oh yeah, I'm at my heart rate's at 168. I'll just better ease back a little bit. So you know what gear you're in. So from there, so you don't explode or you don't under paddle. So it's important that you have that ability to that intuition actually to know where you're at and what intensity you're at. But that will come with time for people that have never used it before.
As I say, there must be obviously time and training and such, obviously training at those kind of levels for certain races and knowing your body and knowing where your sort of heart rate is and knowing how you're feeling and how much energy you've got left in the tank. I know if it hurts, I know I've got a few more gears left, which is unfortunate. The more you do, the worse it gets, because you know, even if you're in pain, you know that there's still an ability to stay there for maybe an hour, which is not an attractive thought, but it's what gets you through. And having that knowledge that you've got it there. And so from a training perspective, do you find that diet plays quite a large part of your training routine? You're quite strict in sort of your diet, your intake and such?
Absolutely. I mean, I didn't really learn a lot about that until I was working in the role I am now. But the actual, in terms of when you're getting older, diet's a massive part of it, because it's all to do with your recovery. So I always try and get across to people when I'm talking about nutrition is that if you're replacing sort of 2-3 million red blood cells per second, what do you want those blood cells to be made out of? Because and that's brain cells, liver cells, eye cells, all that sort of stuff. And that's when you're breaking muscle cells down, you've got to replace them and rebuild them. So you've got to have good material to build them off. So you don't really want to be taking in anything that doesn't. Well, the easiest thing way to get it is if it's got eyes on it, you can eat it. If it grows out the floor, you can eat it. Everything else is you really want to, not put it in your mouth. If you can't pronounce it, don't stick it in your mouth.
It's a good model to live by. If it's got eyes or grows out the ground, you can eat it. If you can't pronounce it, stay away.
Get your squirrel.
And I mean, back to sort of competitions and events, because it's something that certainly I really like that sort of competitive nature, and I must admit, the first one I went to the Head of the Dart this year, and like you say, the atmosphere is just it's something else. It's like something else I've never seen before, in a sense of I've done different events from swimming and cycling. I do lots of different team sports and such, but it is so kind of friendly but competitive at the same time. And even sort of racing, there was people almost racing. We weren't certainly racing at sort of speeds and the level you guys are, but everyone's still sort of talking, kind of racing at the same time. It's a really friendly sport. And I was just curious as to which types of events and competitions are sort of your favourite throughout the season, and which ones you really kind of look forward to and maybe pushed on a little bit harder kind of in the lead up to.
I mean, the Head of Dart is always a really great one, especially it runs all the way through, because it's so, even if you're just leisure paddling, it's such a great scenery all the way through. So it's lovely little to traverse the river all the way down to Dartmouth. I always prefer it that way rather than coming back up. Love the Battle of the Thames because it's always a challenge. So they usually have it 10 miles. I think it's a little bit more this year. I think it's 12, which is great. So 12, we want the diversity in the events.
Sorry. It's always going to happen.
So the Battle of the Thames, we want the diversity of the events. There's different distances, and there's a great international one. It's on a Euro Tour this year, which is down in Carbis. It's unfortunate it's the same day as the Sup Cup in France, but there's a few big names coming over. So I think Conor Baxter's coming over. Fernando Stala from Mexico, he's coming over. So there's a few big names coming over for those events. So it's just trying to attract.
The European Cup, isn't it? At the end of May.
Yes, at the end of May. So it's going to be a great little events that are popping up like that, and we need to invest in that and trying to attract the guys from Europe over. So the Jersey guys are doing a great job with Battle of the Rock. So they attract a lot of French guys over to compete, and it's great to match up against those guys because it lets you know where you are with respect to, like, we're training hard. It's with UK, because we're an island, you can be a big fish in a very small pond. So if you expose yourself to the bigger races, and then it becomes more competitive, and you can move forward with that as well. So it may not be winning, but your attitude changes, your mindset changes, your ability to train differently changes, and your race experience and race skills change as well.
I was going to ask you about that, because I think have you done 5 years on the trot now, sort of topping sort of the table for points for the UK Championships?
Yeah. I can't believe it's been that long, actually.
I thought it was 5. This year will be your 6th if you pull it off this year again. But because you don't race in Team GB, so I was kind of curious as to whether that was sort of something you just decided not to do, and whether it's because of, well, I guess whether you're too busy, or whether you move around different races you want to do yourself, or.
The Mexico race this year, which was run by the ISA, is really good and it's developed really, really well. But we haven't got a clear selection process in this country yet.
Yeah.
I didn't really agree with it's very hard to stay out of politics within it, but the sport is so small that there was a lot of confusion, and there was a lot of misdirection from certain bodies, and also and certain paddlers, and it's a shame really. But I decided to take a step back, try to remove myself from it. And wait until actually we've got it organised, and actually there's a clear selection process, and then and it's also, we can send a full team, so the team is not only the strongest team we can send, but it's also a full team. So even if we get people that aren't as great as some of the guys that are going, that everybody gets an opportunity to represent their country, and it's done properly. So we've got support behind it to drive it through. So we've got like a physio going, or we've got a sports massage person going, we've got a team manager, and we've got someone taking care of the nutrition. Because I know for a number of years some of the guys that have gone out have been ill every time because of the change of environment, the change of food, the flight over there, the stress of it all. So it's to send a good team out with all support around it. It's just really from experiencing from the other different sports I've been in that support has always been there. So once that's become clear, we've got a clear selection process. It's done way in advance, so we can generate sponsorship to send the team out there. We've got people that help with the coaching, organise the transport of the boards, organise the logistics of getting to the airports, all that, so the paddlers actually don't have to worry about that. And actually they can focus on representing their country and also paddling as hard as they can and getting the points for the country. So it actually pushes GB up in that point standing. So that's a really important part of it. But it's very difficult. In its infancy, we've got everything flying around, there's loads of emotion flying around, and it's trying to actually let's get the paddlers involved, get the organisations, the associations involved, and let's actually be paddle centric rather than everybody trying to get pieces of pie and bits and pieces. It's a little bit of a cat fight a lot of the time, but it's trying to get those paddlers to actually just, all the paddlers need to do is focus on the paddling. They don't need to worry about getting sponsorship to get out there. So I know Andy's trying to get out there and is like, help Andy get out to the UK for the to Mexico, but he shouldn't have to do that. It should be funded directly through an association, or they should be driving that. It shouldn't be up to an athlete to try to get out to somewhere, because all Andy wants to do is really focus on paddling. There's Felice Ollie and Marie and Sienna and whoever else is going out for those World Championships.
No, I think that's right, and hopefully as the sport starts to develop, we'll start to see that happening and more sort of funding coming into it. And I think that's from our perspective, Paddle Nation, one of the things that we find quite exciting is how it's going to develop and how it's going to move forwards, and whether that's something we can be part of and lend sort of our expertise and our specialties to it. And it sounds like that. Yeah. Even if that takes a year or 2 years, and then you decide not to be in the team, it certainly sounds like you'll probably be involved in it and going along and supporting.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's exciting to be involved in the sport in any capacity, whether it's coach, therapist, nutrition, all that sort of stuff, club manager, all that sort of. It's great to be representative and trying to. The thing about sport, the older I get, the more satisfaction I get from other people doing well. If you know they've worked hard for it, for someone to achieve is a great thing. And you see that with the London Marathon, you see it with the Olympics, you see it with all different sports. It's great for someone to achieve, and that's what we've got to harness within the country. We've got to recognise that this sport is in its infancy at the moment, and we need to invest in it now to grow and push that forward.
I think that's absolutely right. I was chatting to somebody the other day who's exceptionally well known in supping in the UK, and he was telling me that he could remember decades ago now, I think it is, that windsurfing was a very small sport, and now it's obviously mainstream in the Olympics. And he was telling me that something will be in the Olympics in sort of years to come. I wasn't so exactly sure when, but it will hopefully sort of develop to that kind of
let's hope so. It'll be great if it does.
So one of the things I wanted to go through, and I picked up actually through a previous interview you gave, but you did mention it earlier on there, you've spoken about this meditative effect that paddling has. Now I can relate to that from somebody that's been doing it even for a short time. I was just wondering if you could maybe just sort of explain that to people that may not understand what that is, or sort of how you get into there really.
I mean, I got into. I guess I did a little bit of yoga with actually one of the guys that is part of our club called Scott Brown, and he runs he's a great yoga instructor, and it's a great mindfulness guy. So we spend a lot of time actually trying to control future or past, or reflecting on both future and past, and actually we don't spend a lot of time in the present. So it's actually trying to allow things to happen and actually just be out there and actually enjoying the moment and being present in that moment. So, and that's what really Scott's taught me to do with that. So when you embrace that side of it, and that meditates, the paddle going over and over and over, the silence that you're out there, especially if you're out early in the morning, 7 o'clock in the morning, the sun's just coming up, there's no one else about, just that solitude and that the ability to be moving and meditating at the same time is an amazing thing. But also, you relax, and one of the things that if you tense up with sport, you end up shortening your stroke, the technique starts to go, and so you actually, with relaxation, which is where when you sort of get in your zone, or a lot of sports people say that they're winning and actually just go into a zone and it didn't even feel painful, it was just felt relaxed, and that's what we're talking about, is actually being in that moment, enjoying it and embracing it and relaxing with it. So, I mean, if you look at a paddle stroke, 2/3 of that should be recovery, and only 1/3 of it should be actually effort. So, but a lot of times it's the other way around.
I was going to say, I think I've got mine the wrong way around.
Yeah. So it's really trying to get that, and it's trying to teach people to relax when they're doing it. And I find focusing on that, and I mean, I practice yoga 3 or 4 times a week, not for very long times, but it's about trying to actually bring yourself to a point. Actually, not only do you feel energized, but you're gaining something from it. It's actually giving you something rather than taking away. So a lot of times when people train, they're actually, all they're doing is breaking their bodies down and actually gaining from it. So the recovery side of it, and the yoga and the meditation side of it is all about recovery and promoting recovery. Most people haven't got, they're busy enough lives, they don't make time for exercise or doing stuff they actually enjoy. So I'm a big believer in that. So you've got to make sure that you enjoy your life. You only once, so there's no point in actually thinking about what could I have had, or what could I have, or what do I want. It's about actually you are being the best that you can at that moment. So just enjoy it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I must admit, there was, I mean, I come back to Head of the Dark because it's the longest distance I did in an event, but there's always something hypnotic about sort of the paddle going through and just sort of that rhythm and that glide and such. When you get going, when you hit those points where suddenly there's a bit of wind behind you, and you've got the and the current going with you as well, and suddenly you just sort of feel acceleration going.
Yeah. It's a very nice sensation. It's feeling that glide, and the longer the boards are, the more glide you get. It's a fantastic. I mean, just the wildlife you see as well. Around here, in our harbour, there's seals. I've seen otters. It's just amazing to have a seal porpoising alongside your board when you're going through. Dolphins out on the side that are around the group. It's just phenomenal, and a lot of people miss that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's where some of the warmer climates have a real appeal, because of the sort of the wildlife you're getting, because of the sea life you'll obviously get whilst you're out paddling and such like that. So, I mean, I guess that brings us on to quite nicely, which is one of the key things that we try and do at Paddle Nation, is get more people involved in the sport, people that have never done it before. They may not have ever seen a paddleboard or heard of one, or really just have any understanding. And some people have tried it and hired a board and used it, and obviously want to progress to the next stage. So, I mean, what would your recommendations be for somebody that wants to get into supping, and where to start and where to sort of go from there?
One of the biggest mistakes that I see is that they go down and buy a really expensive board, and they end up with a crap paddle. So they end up with some plastic aluminium shaft, adjustable paddle. So spend your money on the paddle. Don't worry about your board, because you're more likely to change the board, because you're going to outgrow the board. If you're going to surf a lot, get a surf sup. If you're going to explore, train, race, get a race sup. There's a lot of companies that are doing in-between boards that are sort of maybe 11 foot, 12 foot long, but they are just like a normal sort of, I guess, tongue depressor, or they look like a large long board. Those boards aren't all-rounders. They're based on a surfboard, so it won't do you any favours. If you're going to do a lot of cruising or a lot of exploring around the islands or on the sea and stuff, get yourself a race board or a race shape or a touring board. But if you are going to surf a lot, if you're going to surf more, paddle less in terms of touring, get a more surf-orientated board. That's the best way to do it. And also, how heavy are you? If you're heavier, like me, I'm 91 kilos, I go for a large volume board. If you're very small, go for a small volume board. If you are very small framed and also quite short, try to get a carbon board because they're lighter and because the glass will actually last you longer. So with the glass, you get a heavier board, but it will last you less repairs. But the carbon is a lot lighter, but you'll have to repair it more if you're not careful with it.
Yeah.
And also getting advice from local people. A lot of shops are just trying to shove boards out the door with very minimal experience of their product and also if they actually paddle. So find a local club, find someone actually can teach you how to paddle properly. You'll enjoy it more.
I think that's it. It's one of the things we try and push as much as we can is sort of local clubs. Go and find a club, go and find a school, go with recognised instructors that have done a certain level of training and sort of connect with those guys. And I think that's one of the great things I've seen about supping. It's very much the same in surfing. I think a lot of sort of beach sports and such like that, and water sports, is everyone's very friendly. They're happy to have a conversation. They're happy to talk and try and educate. And I guess that's probably one of the important things about if you're in a store that's potentially just trying to sell boards as to what they're actually telling you.
Absolutely.
And whether that's accurate or not. So no, that's really good advice. It's certainly something I think the thing about sort of the 11 foot, 12 foot all rounders, we've definitely seen that with the ice ups. Is they pitch them as these all rounders, and they are just literally sort of grown longboards, and they're quite the thickness is quite high as well. It's sort of 6 inches.
A lot of bananas float around. But it's just trying to make sure that before you even purchase, try as many as you can. There's loads of try before you buy. Get the advice from the clubs or local paddlers. There's loads of communities on Facebook as well now, so on Twitter. So it's join those and ask the questions. So, and that's the good thing about the communities. It's so friendly. Ask the questions and you'll get good answers. Yeah,
and we've certainly seen that you've obviously got your own page as Ryan James Sup, I think. So we'll stick a link to that, and we'll I'm sure people will start bombarding you with questions and stuff. I mean, finally, because I've taken up far too much of your time already. I appreciate you want to probably get on because you've had a day.
I've got a burger to get.
Is one thing that we do, or one thing that we always call, and we like to ask everybody about, is what we call après sup. So basically the post sup. And whether it's sort of after event and really just finding out a bit more about you is kind of what's your ideal kind of après sup. So once you've finished a heavy session or a competition or such, what is sort of the ideal kind of downtime afterwards for you?
Well, I get a massage every week, which is really important for me. We don't tend to invest a lot in our own bodies, and that's one of the big things that you see. I see a lot of broken people all the time. So it's trying to make sure that you invest. So there's nothing better than I'm lucky enough to have support from a local physio, Dave Mott Physio Fitness down at Bournemouth. Actually, you might have heard of Cherries, the Bournemouth football club going up to the Premiership, but he's based down there. But he sorts me out every week. One of his guys, and they're great, and they put me back together. The older I get, the more I have to invest in that. But other than that, it's just whacking on a box set, good food, local cider, and that's it. I'm chilling out on the couch. So there's a lot like that, or reading a good book.
Happy days.
Absolutely, yeah.
No, excellent. I mean, thank you very much, Ryan, for like I say, taking the time to speak to us.
Pleasure.
Certainly, we're going to come and bother you at the next event. So I'm not sure if we're going to make it up to the Thames or not, because we're down in Carbis Bay the week before for training.
Okay.
Hopefully we may do, but if not, certainly we'll come and bother you and try and get some words from you after the next event. So
absolute pleasure.
So
happy to do it anytime.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, and again, we'll speak to you again shortly.
All right, mate. Take it easy, yeah.